Today, we're going to break down a law that has been shaping the Indian workplace for over 75 years. It's the Minimum Wages Act of 1948. This is the foundational rule that sets the absolute floor for pay for millions of people, and we're going to see exactly how it all works.
So let's just make this personal for a second. Have you ever actually stopped and wondered if there's a legal bottom line for your salary? A line in the sand that your pay literally cannot drop below? Well, for a whole lot of workers in India, the answer is a big, clear yes, and it all comes back to this one law.
Think about that. For over 75 years, this single piece of legislation has been a critical safeguard. It's been the baseline, the safety net, protecting workers from being exploited. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of how it does that.
All right, here's our game plan. We're going to walk through this step by step. We'll start with what the act even is, then look at who it actually covers. From there, we'll dig into how the wages are set, what rules it lays down for your workday, and, what happens when somebody breaks those rules.
Okay, first things first. Let's start with the absolute basics. What's the core idea? What's the whole point of this law?
Well, the language in the act itself is super direct. Its main job is to fix minimum wage rates, but, and this is key, only for certain jobs. So this isn't some single national minimum wage for every single person. It's a really targeted approach for industries where workers might be at risk of getting underpaid. The whole point is that it's designed as a specific safety net. Now, for any law to actually work, it has to be really clear about who's protected and who's responsible. So let's meet the key players in this whole setup. First up, the employee. And the Act's definition here is incredibly broad. It really doesn't matter if your work is skilled or unskilled, if it's manual labor or clerical work. The bottom line is, if you're getting paid for your work in a job that's covered by this Act, you are legally considered an employee and you get its protection.
And on the other side of the coin, you've got the employer. This is pretty simple. It's the person or the company that's responsible for paying the wages. It could be your direct boss or even someone who hired you through a contractor. The key thing to notice here is if they employed just one single person in a covered job, this law applies to them.
And that brings us to a really critical idea, scheduled employment. Okay, think of this like a master list. The Act doesn't apply to every job in the country, only to the industries that are specifically named in its schedule. But what's really important is that the government can add new industries to this list. That makes the Act a kind of living document that can actually change with the times.
So let's say your job is on that schedule. How does the government actually decide on that magic number for the minimum wage? Let's take a look at the mechanism.
The Act lays out two really clear methods for this. The government can either put together a special committee to do some digging and give them advice, or it can just publish its own proposals and then ask the public for feedback. Either way you slice it, the process is designed to be a conversation.
And this whole principle of balance is built right in. The law requires these committees to have equal numbers of people representing employers and employees. It's like both sides get a seat at the table. And then they also bring in independent folks to make sure every angle is considered before a final decision gets made.
Now, this Act goes way beyond just a paycheck. It also sets some really fundamental rules for how your workday is actually structured.
So the government has the power to define what a normal workday is in terms of hours. But crucially, the law also guarantees 1 day of rest every single week. And on top of that, it makes sure that if you work any extra hours, you have to be paid a higher rate for that overtime.
Yeah, let's just pause on that for a moment. The law is crystal clear. 1 day of rest for every 7 days of work. That's not a suggestion, it's not a nice to have. It is a fundamental right that's written directly into the law. And check this out. Here is another incredibly powerful pro-worker safeguard. If there are different laws that set different overtime rates, the employer is legally required to pay you whichever rate is higher. The Act is built to make sure the employee always gets the most beneficial deal possible.
So what happens if an employer just doesn't follow these rules? Well, the Act has some serious safeguards and penalties built right in.
This quote from the Act is so powerful. What it means is you cannot legally agree to be paid less than the minimum wage. Even if you signed a contract tomorrow saying you'd work for less, that part of the contract would be totally worthless in the eyes of the law. It's null and void. Your right to a minimum wage can't be signed away, period.
And for employers who break the law, the consequences are serious. The Act lays out penalties that include going to jail for up to 6 months, getting a fine, or even both. This isn't just a suggestion. This law has real teeth.
So if you think you're being underpaid, the Act provides a really clear path for you to take action. You can file a claim yourself, or you can have a lawyer, a union official, or even a government inspector do it for you. The one really crucial detail to remember is that you're on a clock. The claim has to be filed within 6 months of when that payment was supposed to be made.
So, there you have it. We've seen how this act, all the way from 1948, created this incredible, lasting framework for fair wages, fair hours, and worker protection. It's really a testament to some enduring principles. But it leaves us with a big question, right? In our modern world, with the gig economy and everything changing so fast, how does a law that's over 75 years old continue to shape the very foundation of how we work today?